Oh, aku mau record. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening, sir. So, my name is Syarifah Desy Ramadhanti, and today I will representation my proposal, progress 2, and I think the PowerPoint is still same with the progress 1 because I have not revised my proposal. I'm just revised a little bit of my proposal because I still waiting from my supervisor feedback too. Okay, now just I will share the screen of my PPT. So here my research proposal title is about the use of fantasy movies to improve students' ability in writing narrative text. This research will be using a classroom action research as the method, and this will be held and then for 10 grade students at SMA Negeri 10 Pontianak in academic year 2021 and 2022. Okay, we move to the background. So the background for this research is because 10th grade students is a place where they are often bored when material about narrative text is delivered. The purpose of narrative writing is to interest the reader's attention. And then the majority of the teachers in the class usually use storytelling session as an example of how to provide narrative text content. And because of that, sometimes students are too bored to hear the method of delivering storytelling. And it tends not to get student attention because they are too bored and make students completely unable to grasp the important point of the material that has presented. Okay, so for this reason, the use of fantasy movies is a media that can help students to understand what narrative text is like, because the type of structure of fantasy movies is the same as narrative text. The only difference is how the narrative story is presented. Like narrative text is through the text and fantasy movies is through the film. So using fantasy movie can help 10th grade students get references in a technological and fun way. Also, of course, they will find out how to write conversational structure in narrative text. Through fantasy movies with guidance by the teacher and fun references, it can help develop students' writing skill through narrative text. Now we move to the research question and research proposed. In research questions, there is two that divided for the question is one, how does fantasy movie improve students' narrative skills and narrative writing skills, and then how effective it is. And then the research proposed, there's two divided two, and then the first one for teacher and the second one for students. So for the teachers, to find the effectiveness of using fantasy movie to improve students' ability in writing narrative text. And for students, improve their ability in writing and understanding about the structure of narrative text. Now we will move to the research terminology. Here, there's a fantasy movie, narrative text as the research terminology. Okay, so the first one is fantasy movie. In this research, the researcher will use fantasy movie as the media of teaching writing narrative text. The movie that will have provide is Alice in Wonderland in action live version, because Alice in Wonderland movie has two version, the animation first in 1951 and then action live version which has a release at 2010. This movie has chosen because this fantasy movie have like flow plot and easy to understand. Also, researcher will edit and cut the part that will show the points of the important part of the generic structure in the narrative text. The second one is narrative text. Narrative text is a story with complication or problematic events, and it tries to solve difficulties through finding solutions. An important part of narrative text is the narrative mode, the set of methods used to communicate the narrative through the process of narrations. Okay, we move to the literature review. The first one is teaching writing. Teaching writing are important for students because writing helps express ideas and understanding, so that it helps further how the material is discussed to students. So 2002 gives some pointers for teachers in implementing teaching writing. Those are 1, teacher model, 2, relative process the product, 3, working within institutional constraints, 4, catering to different students' needs, and 5, exploiting the use of computers in process writing. And then the second one is narrative text. Percy in Permana and Zuhri 2013 state the narrative text is type of essay that tells story or series of events in which they occur. The plot and the setting are the two main narrative text structures. For teachers, the benefits of lesson that can be taken by students is the most important thing, isn't it? A teacher is not a person who only wants his students to get high marks on exam or test. He has a main goal, which is to take advantage of the lesson he teaches. Okay, so there's the generic structure of narrative text. Derwinka, 1990, states that the steps for constructing a narrative are orientation, complication, resolution, and then there's also the opinion from Kaufman and Ray 2010 state that narratives have been described as having several common components, including a setting, plot, or series of episodes based on goals, attempts, and outcomes, and then resolution or story ending. And then the literature review, the third one is fantasy movie. Fantasy movie or films refer to films that deal with magical elements, myth, fairy tales, imagination, hallucinations, and dream worlds, which includes magic swords, magic spells, dragon, giants, flying horse, flying carpets, gods, witches, jinn, and fairies are the ones that often appear in fantasy films based on opinion first Pratista 2017. In this research, we'll choose Alice in Wonderland as the fantasy movie that will be the media for teaching writing narrative text. Alice in Wonderland has two versions. The first version is animated in 1951 and live action version in 2010. And then there's the advantages of using a fantasy movie in teaching learning. As a result, the benefit of fantasy film for teaching and learning is that they may promote creativity and increase vocabulary. It may aid in the development of self-control in young youths. It may even help them improve their working memory. So this is something that factual literature cannot provide. Okay, we move to the research methodology. The first one is research method. Researcher will take the class action research on 10 grade students and using qualitative and quantitative method at SMA Negeri 10 Pontianak. And then since during the pandemic, researcher will collect data through online if it not possible to do it offline. Collecting data will be planning by planning, acting, observing, and then reflecting in class action research method. And then firstly, researcher will planning before do the acting, which acting could be due after the planning are done. Here, researcher will cut and rearrange the movie structure based on what will explain about the point of the narrative text. After that, researcher will do the writing text, which essay writing test. Here, researcher will ask students to write the essay about what they have already understand about narrative text. And after watch the movie, then researcher will do observation with the result, and the last is reflections. And then we move to the research design. In this research, writer will use class action research as the research design. Action research is a process in which educators examine their own practice systematically and carefully using the techniques of research. Participants design research questions, collect data throughout the year, analyze what they have learned, and write about their findings. Observation, interviews, surveys, and journals are typical data methods that participants use to investigate their question based on Hasina 2013. Okay, now we move to the tools of data collection. Here, students will use two types of tools tools of data collection. The first one is writing text. Students will be asked for rewrite what they have watched and must be contain the structure of narrative text, or it can be called retelling the story. And then observation. In this section, researcher will observe the result of what students have write. Here, researcher will use the observation sheet. Okay, for the data analysis, in this research, we'll use two methods, that is qualitative and quantitative. In qualitative method, will be describe the result from the observation checklist, and quantitative will be the result of writing test. The result will be input into a data table as in the example table 1 below. So a researcher will use these tabular references for input the result of writing test. Okay, I think that's all from my presentation about my proposal design. I think that's the end. So, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.